feel it's been long enough that I can finally give my overall impressions of Sonic Prime as a whole. I've watched it, I've reacted to it on Patreon, and I've got some things to say. Sonic Prime, at the date of this video, is the newest released animated show starring everyone's favorite blue hedgehog in his journey to fix the world he accidentally helped break in the very first episode. This show is, as you probably guessed, very divisive among the fandom. We're mostly to find it childish, dull, and derivative, or fun and decent to middling. Some are even calling it the worst Sonic show ever made, which I'm questioning since Sonic Underground is right there. Where do I stand on Sonic Prime? Is it the best Sonic show ever, or a long, dull mess? Me personally, I think it was a very flawed action show with little bits of brilliance sprinkled in between all the constant action. It feels like they bit off more than they were willing to chew with this, with the constant potential being there, but them not really capitalizing on it. It almost felt as though this show was made by people who were scared that if they didn't show constant action on screen, the younger audience, namely the main audience that was watching this, would grow bored of it. But before we get into that, I'm gonna need to ask y'all for a solid. Hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't already for more videos like this. And we're gonna need to review this by covering each individual season, starting with... Season 1 is about Sonic dealing with the repercussions of his actions and seeing different versions of his friends scattered around the Shadowverse. Though unlike other multiverse media, they don't really do anything too interesting with the concept. Each dimension kind of follows the same format. What if Sonic's crew were pirates, where Knuckles is a bad leader and a coward? What if Sonic's crew were weird forest people, and Amy was a bad leader that turned on them? What if Sonic didn't make a good future and a bunch of Eggmen took over? Wait a minute, go back. There! This is probably the most interesting of the different dimensions, mainly because it gives me similar vibes to Sonic SatAM and Forces. It even has a group of underground fighters called the Resistance, consisting of more hardened versions of Sonic's crew. But by far the best thing to come out of this dimension and season is 9. 9 is an actual darker twist on the Tails character, on what would have happened if he and Sonic never met. But like, to the extreme. What if he had all the genius, but was bullied and burned by the world around him? What kind of warped character would he become? Ladies and gentlemen, this is the character that answers those questions. And he's honestly the most interesting character in the show, and it's not even close. I unironically think 9 is one of the best things in Sonic Prime. And I'm gonna have to make a whole video on this edgy version of Tails just to highlight why. I almost feel like this is what the show should have been about. Sonic going to different dimensions and fixing each individual character and their darker, warped counterparts, rather than following a fairly formulaic episode structure, with Sonic finding his friends and being like, "Hey, you're my friends," and then being like, "No, we're not. Who are you? We'll kill you." And then Sonic speeds around and eventually makes friends with them before getting pulled into another dimension. But I digress. There are some major issues early on in the show for first-timers that might be watching this as their first real dive into Sonic media. The very first episode starts with a very brief exposition dump to get viewers caught up on the general plot. But we only get to spend all of 3 minutes with Sonic's regular crew before he's blasted into the Shadowverse, and then our first alternate dimension, New York. Now this might not seem like a big deal to most people familiar with Sonic and his cast of colorful critters and buddies, but if you aren't familiar with them, you don't really get that much time to get to know them as they are in Sonic's world. They try to mitigate this later with some flashbacks here and there, but still. I almost feel like the reveal of Sonic's crew in their alternate forms would have hit harder if we had had more episodes to show Sonic and his friends in their everyday life beforehand, before we turned everything on its side. Like, how much crazier would it have been if we got to see Amy as a people person before we saw her as a paranoid loner who had turned her back on her friends for nature? Or if we had seen how dedicated and committed Knuckles was to his responsibilities before we saw him as a cowardly pirate, willing to abandon everyone at the slightest inconvenience. Again, most of us Sonic fans already are familiar with these characters and their personalities by default. But I can't help but feel it would have been better to see the characters in the world built up a bit more before they threw us into the thick of it. Speaking of thick, we need to talk about the Chaos Council. They're there, I guess. They're not that offensive, but they do leave a lot to be desired. Like, they almost each fall into Deadly Six territory, with each of them playing a different role. This one is the angsty one. This one is the rebellious one. This one is old. This one is baby. And this one has a wig? I mean, they're serviceable, but I would have loved to have seen a bit more backstory on these guys. Like, are they Eggmen from other Shadow Spaces that gathered all to this one to take over? Or were they all just on the same page from the get-go here? And for that matter, the Shadowverse also had a lot of unanswered questions for me. How come the Prime Dimension, aka Green Hill, is the only one with a Sonic or Shadow? It's weird that we only see Amy, Big, Tails, Rouge, and Knuckles of every other dimension, but we never see a different Sonic or Shadow. This is what I mean by the show having a lot of potential, but never really getting more than surface level with the multiversal concept. Sonic travels through multiple different dimensions, meeting different versions of his friends, befriending them, and then ultimately getting pulled to another dimension to do more or less the same thing. There's not really much that happens that's that important this season, but at some point 9 gets captured by the multiple Eggman. But having 9 secretly rooting for Sonic and also working in the background to help him was pretty cool, because it shows that much like the other different versions of Sonic's crew he's interacted with, Sonic has had a positive influence on everybody, and the cracks are starting to form in his edgy persona. Something that's totally not foreshadowing future events. And of course, Shadow assaulting Sonic for an actual good reason is a plus too. Season 1 is alright, if a bit samey until the end. I give it about a 6.8 out of 10. This season is all about Sonic and Shadow learning to work together to begin fixing the Shadowverse. That is, after Shadow spends a good portion of the first episode beating Sonic around the fated Green Hill. All to steal the tech that allows him to jump between shatter spaces. Even though Shadow wins fair and square, the writers have decided that he is not worthy enough to go on a multiversal adventure. Only the chosen one, Sonic, can do it. Really, it's because Sonic was at the center of the blast that caused the dimensions to split, so we can just traverse the dimensions. And during the majority of this season, both Shadow and 9 are helping Sonic out from the sidelines, as he tries to gather the multiversal shards together to fix things. Only it's becoming increasingly more apparent that 9 is trying to gather the shards for different reasons than they are. The majority of these episodes is basically a giant heist as they try to take the various Shadowverse shards from the Eggman and wind up escaping to Green Hill, now called Ghost Hill as it is a shell of its former self. With Sonic, Shadow, and 9 successfully bringing all the shards back to the source, they agreed to put it all back together to fix things. But it won't be that easy as the Eggman quickly find them and send a bunch of robots their way. Sonic and Shadow agree to cover 9 while he rebuilds the shards, with Shadow openly stating that he doesn't trust this version of Tails. What is it with Shadow and being so logically sound in this show? Seriously, he's so much more mature and level-headed compared to Sonic, who seems more like his younger movie self learning to be more responsible. The last episode ends with 9 and Sonic realizing that their goals don't align. Sonic wants to restore Green Hill, and 9 wants to build a new world. In his own words, a better world. And this right here was one of my favorite parts of the whole show. Seeing both of them confronting each other and arguing about which of their worlds to restore was a rare character-driven moment in this show. I mean, this line in particular stuck with me long after I had finished it.
Just like the real Tails would.
I am real!
I'm sure many people feel like 9 was just being a whiny brat here, but try to look at it from his point of view. Life has dealt him a series of shitty hands. Cursed with 2 tails, bullied endlessly, and unable to make friends and connect with people. This is a version of Tails that is understandably ready to ditch the world and life he had for a better one. And just when he thinks he's made a real friend, that friend winds up basically telling him that he wants things to go back to how they were, and almost admitting that he used them for his own goals. And they don't even know if restoring Green Hill will fix the other worlds or break them down further. Is 9 being hypocritical? Yeah, absolutely. He's not completely faultless, but I can at least see where he's coming from. You make sense to me, 9. Anyway, Season 2 gets an 8 out of 10. It's probably my favorite season of the show, just because of the overall storytelling, the re-addition of Shadow to the cast, and all the 9 bits leading to his eventual betrayal. Oh, and there's this Metal Sonic fight in there too, I guess. It was pretty cool. And if you're wondering why I don't seem as excited about this as I normally would be, it's because of Season 3. This is it. This is the season that both made and broke the show. Let's face it, the thing you remember the most about a show or a movie is how it ends. You can have a show that's fun and amazing until it hits the ending, and depending on how much time you sunk into it, it can either be a huge disappointment or a slap in the face for its viewers. And yeah, sure, some people might say, well, it was the journey, not the destination, and it was a fun ride. But that doesn't take the sting away. Regardless, this season has exactly what I described in droves. It starts off well enough with 9 having gotten away with the shards and putting them back together in the Grim to reform the full Paradox Prism. With the Prism reformed, he starts drawing on its power to recreate the Grim, not realizing he's destabling the other dimensions by spreading decay. I know it's a lot, but bear with me here. He soon learns he is unable to stop the decay from spreading to the Grim. and needs Sonic's energy to stabilize everything. Think of each dimension like a tooth, and each time they draw energy from the prism, it's like brushing that same tooth with a Twizzler coated in nerds and dipped in pixie sticks. And Sonic is like a toothbrush covered in, you know what, you get the point. Sonic and Shadow are able to track 9 to the Grim, and a confrontation ensues. And that's when he reveals he has robotic clones of our main cast. Get ready everybody, you are going to be seeing these guys a lot this season. Shadow, realizing that 9 is after Sonic, helps him escape, essentially sacrificing himself to ensure 9 doesn't get his hands on him. Oh, by the way, get used to seeing 9 do this a lot too. The rest of the season is Sonic helping the other dimensions stabilize a bit more as they buy time to deal with the 9 situation at the Grim, with everyone losing their home dimensions and all reconvening at the Egg Council's ship. When Sonic sees that they are all out of options and time, he agrees to give himself up to 9 to save all the other dimensions. What happens next is the highlight of Season 3 for me, when Sonic and 9 meet to talk one more time, with Sonic desperately trying to reach 9 with his words and bring an end to this. It's a genuinely nice moment where we get to see them open up to one another, with 9 begrudgingly admitting that he respected Sonic and legitimately thought of him as a friend. And when Sonic starts to speak to him, not as Tails but finally acknowledging him as 9, as his friend, you could see 9 for just a moment might have been willing to ditch his plan to use Sonic. I think the animators did a really good job with the expressions here. Like, look at 9's face during most of this. You can just see a kid who is hurting and angry at the world, but also wants to believe he has a friend in Sonic. And then the plot comes back and that moment is left to the wayside. It's almost like the writers were thinking, whew, that's enough character moments for one season. We really need 3 episodes of action to offset these 3 minutes of talking. Otherwise the kids might get bored. And so they did that. The entire crew from every dimension shows up at the Grim to help Sonic defeat 9 aboard Eggman's ship, leading 9 to believe Sonic brought them here to jump him. So a battle ensues. For like 3 episodes. Not even kidding. This is where I felt the show really dip and drag. And don't get me wrong, I am not against action in a cartoon aimed for younger audiences. My real issue with the finale is just how damn long it was. Sure, it's fun for the first 20 to 30 minutes, but after a while it just becomes noise and my brain starts to turn off. It felt like the Avengers Endgame climactic battle stretched out to about an hour. Another issue I had was just how repetitive it was too. Remember when I said get used to seeing the robot doppelgangers? Well, that's because 9, empowered by the Paradox Prism, is able to make countless clones of them for everyone to fight. Over and over and over and over again. For 3 episodes, Sonic and friends keep going back and forth with these robots. They beat the robots, 9 gets mad and makes more of them. Sonic exclaims, "Wait, I have an idea!" Then the robots start winning. 9 exclaims Sonic will be his before our heroes get a second win and start beating the robot clones, causing 9 to get mad and make more clone robots. And this just loops over and over, you get the idea. But wait, Wolfie! They did mix it up once, by making a Big the Cat bot, which they beat, but then 9 brings it back an episode later for more. I kid you not, when this kept happening, I started to lose it. I legit could not believe this went on for like 3 episodes. Anyway, I'm exhausted from having to recall this, so let's bring it home, shall we? Sonic and all of his friends finally make it to 9, and Sonic once again tells them that he only wants everyone to be safe in their own dimensions and that he's his friend. Only this time it gets through to him because it's the last episode and now he has to? With everything resolved, Sonic agrees to give up his energy to stabilize everyone's homes, though it might wind up killing him. Yeah, that was kind of a thing that would happen if they took his energy. They extract his energy and the worlds are saved. But also Sonic is dying. Dude is legit fading away without that energy. And with the help of all of the friends he made along the way, and Shadow, everyone makes it back to their home dimension and Shadow manages to get Sonic back to Green Hill before he completely fades away. Hey look, a Sonato moment for the fans. And with that, our final part of the episode is Sonic going back in time to the very first episode. Refreshed and ready to fight with his friends, only this time instead of going in headstrong and breaking the prism, the lesson he learned is to rely on his friends and listen to them. With the final shot being a teaser of some Eggman creation rolling up on the crew. As of now, there is no confirmation of whether or not there's going to be a Season 4 of Sonic Prime, but I don't think we're getting one. Season 3 is one of those rare breeds where it starts off pretty good, takes a massive dip in the middle, and kind of sort of does an okay job of its ending. I kind of feel like it could have been made better by cutting down the length of it from 7 episodes to maybe 3 or 4. Keep episode 1, 2, 3, cut the 3 episodes of action afterwards down to 1 big fighting episode, and then you have the last episode coming after. As it stands now, season 3 was a lot of fighting filler, and not a whole lot of substance in the center. It's like a Hot Pocket you just microwaved. Hot on the outside, but still cold and frozen on the inside. It needed more time in the oven. The resolution was kind of meh too. The ending of each world is kind of left ambiguous, and we don't really get an answer as to what happens with the rest of the other variations of the Sonic crew or 9. It's just implied they all go back to their worlds and live happily ever after, with 9 living alone in the Grim. Would have been cool to have a Spider-Verse style teaser where 9 or one of his other Sonic friends from another dimension come back to Green Hill through a portal asking Sonic to help him defeat a new threat. But I digress. At this point, I'd be judging the show for what it's not, and that's not the point of this. Season 3 gets about a 4 out of 10. And that's Sonic Prime. Is it a good show? It's fine. It's decent. I think it was okay to watch along with the first time, otherwise inoffensive. But would I rewatch it? Probably not. Of the Sonic shows I've seen, it probably goes somewhere near the bottom. Around where Sonic Underground is. Maybe higher. Good animation, great voice acting from the cast. Like the VAs did a really excellent job sounding similar to the game cast, while also giving it their own flair. Great voice direction, some neat concepts though they were never really capitalized on. I would have loved to have just seen a show of Sonic meeting 9 and teaching the edgy fox that it's not all hopeless in New York. But I've got a whole video on 9 coming out soon that will cover that. Prime as a whole gets about a 5.8 out of 10. But what did you guys think of Sonic Prime? Best Sonic show or worst Sonic show ever? Let me know in the comment section below. Hit that like button and don't forget to subscribe for more videos like this if you haven't already. Thank you guys for watching all the way to the very end. You guys are the OGs. You guys are real ones. I will catch you all next time and I'll see you then. Stay tuned.